Microsoft company in Ukraine, and today he's the deputy head of the presidential administration of Ukraine on reforms. And so we have Dmytro Shimkiv.
Yesterday, who just a few days ago was head of the Microsoft office in Ukraine, and here Dmytro Shymkiv, as the newly appointed deputy head of the presidential administration of Ukraine, is here in Ukraine Crisis Media Center. Please welcome.
Good morning. I will speak Ukrainian, but you can ask questions in English. I'm very happy to see you all. It's the second time when I am in this new role, and I make a public presentation. Very often they ask me, what will I do? What will be my responsibility? It's very easy. Two main directions. The first one is to reforms, everything about reforms in the country, any topics related to reforms, and that includes economy, anti-corruption, deregulation, law enforcement bodies, a lot of different issues to cover, and they're discussed in the society. The topic of reforms requires urgent solutions, and the most important is to achieve results, quick results. The society is facing the task of showing efficiency of the new government, efficiency of the government in achieving what we were fighting for on Maidan. And one of the phrases of the president, I'm very happy to work in his team, is we need to unite four directions of reforms, or four vectors or players which work for reforms: administration of the president, and the parliament, and cabinet of ministers, and the civil society. Because at present there are a lot of ideas and results of reanimation package of reforms, and I mean there is 10 laws, but it seems like a few, but that's a lot. If we speak about the civic platform New Country, more than 1,000 people who developed some ideas how to reform the country. Also initiatives in the Ministry of Economic Development as to deregulation. Yesterday there was a meeting in the office on three vectors. President, I represented the administration of the President, the Ministry of Economic Development, Minister Shemata was there, and civil society experts. We discussed issues of deregulation. That's the format to decide where to go. What we need at present is to understand in general what kind of reforms are we talking about, because there are lots of them, and there are lots of initiatives. And between an initiative and a reform, there is a big gap, a big road to take. We need to understand what should be done, what legislation should be developed, who's responsible, how long, deadlines, a lot of work to be done. For any reform, there should be a passport, for example, like a description or a policy paper. There are lots of names for this. And the work on and understanding which reforms, how ideas are used and are turned into reforms. But the most important, when the laws are passed, when they achieve results, and when we pass deregulation legislation, it's very important to monitor all results in a year, what was expected from the deregulation, because very often when deregulation is announced, we speak about economic results, and it's very important that economic result is achieved. In such a way, we can believe that we can measure efficiency or not efficiency of reforms. That is a general approach. That is, in general, what I am responsible for. The second direction is reforms in the administration of the president, because that is a body of power. And instead of talking about reforms in that body, we have to take it and to reform it. That's the task was given by President personally to me, and by the head of the president to reform that includes staff, information, e-governance, structure, a lot of many different things. That's a big project. We should achieve results, quick results. So those are two directions I'm working on: reforms in the country and how they develop. That's in the way of coordination, control, and support. And the second direction is practical, real steps and an example for others, other bodies of power, how to reform a state agency, a state structure. Thank you. Your questions. Before the deputy, he was a representative in the cabinet of ministers. So will you represent the president in the cabinet of ministers? If not, who will do that? And could you be more specific about what will be changed in the administration? To answer your question, we are working on the first. Let me take the first question. Who will represent the president in the cabinet of ministers or in the parliament? And that is under discussion. I don't have a ready answer for you. So there are some people, some candidates for that position, and a concrete plan, a concrete structure. I would like to make it public because now it's we discuss it. We have a discussion how to organize for efficient work. Spilno TV, and tell me please, in a month, in the administration of the president and the cabinet of ministers, they were trying groups. They were trying to bring the representatives of party regions. What's your personal position about bringing an involvement of audios representatives from the party of regions? Could you be more specific? Whom do you call audios dynasty notorious or dynasties? The whole dynasties. And my position, if we speak about managers, my experience shows that there are a lot of professional managers who work in different public agencies, private agencies, companies, etc. We have a chance to involve professionals, civic professionals from business to discuss or to introduce reforms. That's wonderful. I cannot comment on different people because I'm on the second day on the position. What's your principal position about bringing such people? I think that we should invite professionals, despite the fact that they take anti-Ukrainian position, they will destroy the country, etc. People who must work in the power and the government. The first element is the feature is the most important feature is values. Values are the most important criteria. Formal values, so love to Ukraine, respect to our country, to our achievements. So Maidan, for me personally, that is criteria number one. I understand that it's turned into a long discussion. What's your personal position to the party of region, and which in 6 months showed itself as an aggressive, anti-Ukrainian, anti-national, anti-state party, and they were killing people. They're still killing people. They sponsor terrorists. Now, my personal position to the party of region.
My personal position, my personal attitude to them is not positive, but there are personalities who were in the party of regions. I know them personally, and I've known them as efficient managers. And the question to you, as a newly elected member of the presidential administration, may I just call you by name? I don't like the question from me, Valery Volkom. The reanimation reform package is impossible without returning the investment passport from Switzerland, from Geneva to Ukraine, the cost of which is $4 billion. Are you ready to return this investment passport, which since 1993 is in Geneva? I can help you in that. This document could turn us from default to a normal economic development. Could you please repeat the question, what I'm ready for? What I should be ready for? Investment passport of Ukraine, which costs $4 trillion, investment passport of Ukraine. I don't know what it is. That is our resource passport of Ukraine. It's in Geneva now. I do not know this legal term, investment passport, and I cannot provide comments on that. I will simplify it. That's a resource certificate on the assessing of all the resources in the subsoil of Ukraine, and that was submitted by Firtash to Geneva. I'm responsible for implementation of reforms in Ukraine, only for the reforms. The issue of investment passport should be identified. What is investment passport? What are the corporate rights, legal support? All that will help understand specific steps to implementation. The new term, investment passport, suggested by you, maybe it is an interesting term, but if it is a legal term, if it does exist in legal environment, then we will do everything possible for these processes to take place. You mentioned that you had the meeting with the people who represent the group animation reform package, and you mentioned just deregulation. But what about their proposals on reconstructing the tax system of Ukraine? The ideas suggested by the animation reform package are very interesting. Talking about taxation, I had the meeting. I respect this group reanimation reform package. I participated there for some time as an expert, and I can tell you that the initiatives are interesting, but they are to be analyzed deeper. What I mean, when we say that we need to move from declarations to practical implementation, to defining different indicators of economic efficiency and process. Yesterday, for example, there was a discussion of one topic, and that was on deregulation, where everyone's talking about deregulation. Like, for example, agriculture. This deregulation is very good for business, but it's not good for common people, not profitable for them, not beneficial. So the question is, any idea should be balanced between the business and the society, between the authorities and the society, authorities, business and society. So back to the topic of reforms in taxation, we need to analyze, examine specific proposal, examine economic effect. I know the RRP's proposals, but this is to be analyzed in more detail, because declarations is one thing, but we need to have economic substantiation of that. To say, yes, I do support deregulation, I do support the reduction of taxation, but we need to understand that we have some social financing, social payments, and this is to be ensured as well. The ideas existing in Ukraine, it's more than 1,000, more than 2,000 ideas, proposals on economics. Spilne TV, before Maidan, I was involved into the website of the parliament, Zakon UA, and you probably know what's happening with the regulatory basis. Basically, if you take the website of the cabinet of ministers, there are no there are no documents there which were passed before 2005. There are basically like 30, 40 documents are there on the website of the parliament. Besides the laws and drafts, there are all the documents of the cabinet ministers, of the president, of the ministries, agencies, but that's not regulated by anything. And the resource is in a bad situation. By the end of the year, we cannot see the situation. We cannot hope that this resource will be different. I wrote some proposals to Marina Stadnichuk. Your question, and we will start the civil initiative with the reanimation reform package. I ask you to support this initiative in the presidential administration. I can tell you that the topic of e-governance, yesterday I read about the elements of infrastructure, of how that's happening. I don't want to comment on that. I want to move the presidential administration as the first body into the 21st century, and then all other agencies and institutions and ministries. One more question. Donetsk National University, could you please say, could you name 3 most important reforms that European partners insist on? 3? 4, I would say 4, because it's very difficult to exclude. The first, everything about anti-corruption. The second, judicial reform. The third, economic deregulation, everything related to economics, because we need to increase GDP of the country. And the fourth, civil service. Today, that's quite a complicated topic. It's long-term, but it has to be changed because people are the basis of everything. And if we change laws, if we just redraft the resolutions, nothing will happen. It is important to have changes, really. People have to be with values, competences, technical knowledge, and experience. That is a difficult process. The idea on lustration is a great idea, but in the result of lustration, what may happen that the best ones, those who are professionals, they will be thrown out, and those who can get secured in the internal organization, they stay there. In some other countries, that's happening. Believe me, the system is strong. We and the team and the presidential administration, we feel it. I'm there the second day and I understand it. But there are many people who are very interesting. I'm talking about knowledge, experience. They have a very good potential to work. They have good values. So we need to be careful in this process, not to throw out a baby with the waters, because unfortunately not many people are queuing up to get to the civil service, and the issue of forming the personnel reserve, planning the human resources 2-3 years ahead. If we're talking about state companies, how will we be planning to replace those people who will be heading them? What skills should these people have? For example, characteristics and competences of a person who goes to work in the state company. We would like to see a person who's entrepreneurial, economist, and it's difficult for me to think about economist and entrepreneur in the civil state body. It's more like the person who is just administrator, and we need to create the system which has been for many years in Ukraine, in the corporate system of Ukraine. It's not easy to find very good people, and the salaries are very low. That's another direction of reforms. So the civil service is to be reformed so that it's interesting, so that people there are with high values. That is very important direction, and that is probably the longest talking about the term reform. We have some situational reforms. Even if we attract a lot of money to the country, the money are to be managed, and we need to manage it with managerial experience. You prevented my question. You regularly are in the dozen best top 10 managers of Ukraine. You have recently been the manager of a top American company. Will you bring in the American style of management and the competencies that you have? Because American companies invest a lot into the development of their employees, but they require very strict competencies that you've mentioned from their employees. So will this be the American style of management in administration?
Thank you for your question. My style of management is based on three main principles. The first one, it is more like Anglo-Saxon or Anglo-American orientation and results, and or performance focus and achievement of vision. Vision, concrete results, and plan to achieve results. The second style, to build processes and procedures, healthy bureaucracy must be there, because there must be if processes are not regulated or are so complicated like we have in our country. As a rule, they encourage corruption and postponements, inefficiency, etc. So the second direction is a process and clear, understandable, transparent, effective. We understand the bottlenecks, and so it's about style. And the third component is people. It's a Scandinavian approach. When people are the most important, and human values, people's values, like dignity of people, that's probably the most important. And I believe that the most important is a flat organization when anybody can enter a room of anyone. I don't love hierarchies. Sometimes they should exist, but I believe that it's better to build to work in the hierarchy of responsibility and in the hierarchy of names and titles. Will I do that? Will I bring that to the administration? I will try. Today, the mission of IMF will stop. Is leaving today. Do you know something about the results? No. I don't have information about that. Sorry. One more question. Let me speak about something else. Germano Buchov, I represent probably the most radical oppositional groups in Russia, and I would like to ask you, because we are working on this issue, Ukraine is losing information war to Kremlin in Europe, and that builds investment. That has influence on investment climate attitude to your country. So what can be done, or what new administration, new president can do to resist that campaign of lie and that war, which hurts a lot, because I have good contacts with top businessmen, Russian businessmen, Ukrainian, American, and I see that has influence on mind of people in the West, and speeches, publications, what the administration can do, how you can support our initiative. For example, resistance to new fascism from Kremlin. During the last several months, I traveled a lot around Europe as a businessman, and I spoke to businessmen of Europe, and I told about Ukraine. And I informed them about the events, and I have a special presentation. And in details, I describe chronology of events, and when I allowed to compare and to speak, when I allowed to speak deeper. Yes, there is propaganda about which you are talking. It's very thin, very professional, very sophisticated, and I noticed that. So I completely agree with you. To fight any propaganda, we need to say, we have to speak and explain. Believe me, when they ask me, when I told about the revolution, about people, when I showed how they were dying, and all those values, what we revolted for, they started to ask me about. They asked me about radicals, about Bandera. It's just complete rubbish, and I had to explain them gradually, slowly, and I had to show materials of Nuremberg and to explain. So it works. Europeans are very open when they see more facts, they are quicker in decisions. They start to doubt, and they doubt faster. We have to understand that takes a lot of work, and the most important, one of the most important elements, the Ukrainian Crisis Center is very important because from here, a lot of information goes to the West. This is one of the channels, and there is also it was organized. A lot of NGOs organized such channels and social networks that do a lot. What the government can do, we must come and say, we must come and tell what we are doing. If to look at the situation in the East, and a lot of efforts are done for people in the East to hear and know about the real situation. People can be convinced only by people. And from man to man, we'll achieve maximal results. Universal recipes of massive attacks, massive information war that can be, first of all, it's very expensive, and very often it's not efficient, and because Russia works through agents of influence very often. Thank you very much, Dmytro. Good luck, energy, inspiration, and well, we will welcome you with concrete results in our center. Thank you.
Давайте я вам емейл напишу краще, тому що телефон це.
Телефон це складніше, я для